In this lecture, we will go over the CFA Level 1 reading on risk management applications of option strategies. This is a relatively short reading, and here are the various positions that we will look at. A long call and a short call, long put, short put, covered call and protective put. For each of these positions, we need to understand the value diagram or the payoff diagram. Value and payoff will be used interchangeably in this lecture. The profit diagrams, the maximum profit, maximum loss, break even, and the market outlook of an investor who is taking any of these positions. Let's start with the long call, and this is something that you have seen before. To understand these positions, we should plot or draw the value or payoff diagrams and the profit diagrams. Assume that our strike price is 25 and that we purchase a call option for 3. I say purchase because we are talking about a long call over here. The strike price is 25, so the first thing you do is mark 25. As we saw in the previous reading, for a long call, the payoff is 0 up to 25. But then after 25, the payoff increases with stock price. So this is a 45-degree line or a line with a slope of 1, which means that if the stock price goes up to 30, then the payoff is 5. What about the profit? Note that you have paid $3 for this option, which means that if the payoff is 0, then the profit is going to be minus 3. So up to the strike price of 25, our profit is going to be minus 3. But after that, we are going to make some money, in the sense that if the option is in the money at expiration, then it will be exercised. So our profit diagram will look like this. The profit diagram is essentially 3 units below the payoff diagram. Let me label this again. So the top diagram is the payoff. The break-even point is 28. If the stock price comes to 28, that means that we have a payoff of 3, and that payoff of 3 offsets what we pay for the call option. Anything after that then will be a profit. So if the stock price goes to 30, then the profit is going to be 2. Let me just identify the maximum profit and maximum loss for a long call position. The maximum profit is infinite because as the stock price keeps increasing, our profit keeps increasing. The maximum loss is 3. 3 represents the amount that you pay for the call option. Once you have purchased the call option, given the one-sided payoff, if the underlying goes down, the payoff is 0. You will not exercise the option and you will also not lose because the stock price is down. But the amount that you've paid, $3, that is a cost and hence that is your loss. The maximum loss is 3. Market outlook of the investor. Clearly, if the investor is quite confident that the stock will go up, then he might take a long call position. The short call, as we've talked about in the earlier reading, is the exact opposite. So let's take the same scenario. Strike price is 25. This is the payoff diagram for the short call. The profit is going to be 3 units above the payoff because this is a short call position, which means you have sold a call. So when you sell a call, you make $3. If the call expires out of the money, that means the long party will not come to you and you essentially pocket the $3. But if the stock price ends up above 25, then obviously the option will be exercised. The payoff will be negative as shown over here. If the stock price is 28, then the payoff is going to be minus 3, and the $3 that you lose over here will offset the money that you made when you sold the call option. So the break-even point is 28. The maximum loss, as you can see with this profit diagram, is infinite. So this is a very dangerous position to take. If you are right and the stock price either stays the same or goes down, then you make some money. But if the stock price increases a lot, then your losses keep increasing. The maximum profit is 3, which is the amount that you get when you sell the call option. In terms of a formula for the break-even, that formula is simply the strike price of 25 in this case, plus how much you get for the call option. Now, I've already alluded to the market outlook of the investor, but if the investor expects the stock to stay roughly stable or maybe go down a little, then it would make sense to take a short call position. This material is quite straightforward, but to understand it well, you need to do some examples. So try this example before looking at the solution. Here is what you should get. Let's look at the long position first, because that's what we are talking about here. Notice that if the stock price ends up at 40, 45 or 50, so that's these points, then the payoff for the long is 0 and the profit is -5 because the long has paid $5 for the call option. But after that, the payoff is positive, which means that our profit starts increasing from -5. The break-even point is 55 because at 55 we have a payoff of 5, which offsets the $5 paid for the call option. The maximum possible profit is infinite and the maximum loss is -5, which is the amount that has been paid for the call option. What about the maximum profit and loss for the short party? The payoff diagram and the profit diagram are a mirror image in the x-axis. I could have drawn these pictures on the same axis, but that would have made the picture cluttered. So I have reproduced it in the bottom half of the screen. Notice that at these prices, 40, 45, 50, the payoff is 0. So the short doesn't need to pay anything, but the profit will be +5 because this is the amount that the short has received for selling the call option. Break even again is 55. And after that, if the stock price keeps increasing, then the payoff is more than 5. So the short, for example, if the stock price is 56, the short has to pay $6, which is 1 more than what he received, and there will be a loss of 1. The maximum loss is infinite because as the stock price keeps increasing, the payoff keeps decreasing. The maximum possible profit is 5, and that happens if the stock stays at 50 or below 50. Now do example 1 from the curriculum. Next we come to a long put position. Again, we will assume that the strike price is 25, and let's say that we buy a put for $3. The payoff diagram will look like this, where the maximum payoff happens if the stock price goes down to 0, and we've talked about this in an earlier reading. If the stock price is above 25, then the put option expires out of the money. The payoff is 0. The right to sell for 25 is worthless if the underlying is more than 25 in the market. The profit diagram will simply be 3 units below because we have paid the $3 for the put option. So the maximum possible profit now is 22. Payoff is 25 minus the $3 that we pay means The best case scenario is a profit of 22. The break even is also 22, because if the stock price falls to 22, then the payoff is 3, which offsets the amount that has been paid for the put option. So let me just put these numbers over here. The break-even number is 22, and in terms of our formula, the break-even is the strike price, X, in our example that is 25, minus the amount that has been paid for the put, which is 3. The maximum profit is X minus P again, which is 22, and that was shown right here. The maximum loss is 3, because if the stock price goes up, then what we lose is the amount that was paid for the option. Market outlook of investor. It makes sense to get into a long position if we expect the stock price to fall. Notice that as the stock price falls, the profit increases. Next we come to the short put position. This is where we sell a put for $3. Again, we are assuming a strike price of 25. The short put payoff is a mirror image of what we saw on the previous slide. The profit would be the payoff diagram plus 3. So 3 is the value or the price of the put option. So this distance is 3. The break-even point here is the same. It is 22. And the maximum loss is 22. The formula for maximum profit is simply the amount that we get for the option, which is P. In our example, that is 3. The maximum loss for the short put is this number, which is X minus P, and for us that is 22. The break even point is equal to 22, and that again is X minus P. The market outlook for the investor is that the stock is about stable or maybe increasing a little bit, because notice that the short put position is a little bit profitable or somewhat profitable if the stock price stays at about 25 or goes up. Now I want you to do this example before looking at the solution. To make things easy, you should draw the payoff diagrams and the profit diagrams. So over here we have the payoff and profit for the long position. If we take prices of 40, 45 and 50, notice that at a price of 45 we have break even, because over here the payoff is 5, which offsets the $5 paid for the long put. At a stock price of 40, there is actually a profit of 5. At a stock price of 50, the payoff is 0 and the loss is minus 5, which is the amount paid for the put. And if the stock price is above 50, then the loss is minus 5. So the maximum possible profit is right here. It is 50 minus 5, which is 45. That would also be X minus P. The maximum loss is P, which is the amount paid for the put option. Here we are looking at the short position where the break even is the same number, which is 45. This point is also 45. The maximum loss is 45. The maximum gain for the short is 5, which is the amount the short receives for the put option. Now do example 2 from the curriculum. Risk management strategies with options and the underlying. I emphasize the and over here because everything that we have discussed so far involved just the option, either a call option or a put option. Now we will talk about two strategies, a covered call strategy and a protective put strategy. Both involve the underlying. Let's talk about covered call briefly first. With a covered call, we have two instruments. We have the stock or the underlying. I generally think of it in terms of a stock, even though the underlying could be a bond or some other instrument, but it is easier to work with stocks. So let's say the underlying is a stock and we sell a call. So it is a stock and a short call position. This is a conservative strategy. It reduces risk but limits upside potential. I'll talk about this strategy at a high level over here and show the profit diagram, and then on the next slide we will get into a little more detail. Think about just owning a stock. If you simply own a stock, and let's say that you bought the stock for $25, then if the stock price goes up, you benefit. If the stock price goes down, then you lose. So think of this as the profit, assuming you simply hold the stock. Now, in addition to the stock, let's say that you go short on a call. In other words, if the stock price is going up, the short call position means that you will actually lose money, because with a short call you need to make a payoff. You need to make the payment if the stock price goes up. So with a short call position you are actually going to lose money. Since these two are moving in opposite directions, what you can tell here is that as the stock price goes up, the combined position, the covered call position, is going to be flat, because the stock going up is going to be offset by the short call coming down. What about if the stock price falls? If the stock price falls, clearly you are losing money, but the loss will be somewhat buffered by the money that you make on the call option. When you sell a call, you get some money. So let's say you sold a call for $3, you get $3. That $3 is a cushion. So if the stock price from 25 comes down to 22, your loss is actually zero, because even though you lose 3 on the stock, but you got 3 by selling the call. So notice that your loss is reduced. So with a covered call, our losses are less compared to plainly, or compared to just holding a stock, and that is a good thing. But that reduction of loss comes at a cost. The cost is that we lose the upside potential. The question then becomes, why do we do this strategy? Think of this as a conservative strategy where you've bought a stock for 25 and you don't want to lose too much money, and you are not after making a very high profit either. And let's say that your view is that the stock will remain at or about 25. Then with the covered call, you do make some money. Even if the stock goes down a little, you will probably make a little bit of money because of the call option that you sold. Now, exactly what this maximum profit is, what the break even is, and what the potential worst case scenario is will be covered in the next slide. First, let's also introduce the protective put. Here again, you own the underlying. So what is common between 1 and 2 is in both cases you own the underlying. Again, we'll assume that it's a stock. And here you buy a put option. You saw this portfolio earlier when we did put call parity. There, one of the portfolios was a protective put. The other was a fiduciary call, which is different from a covered call. But the protective put that we talked about earlier is the exact same protective put that we are talking about here. A protective put limits downside risk. Effectively, when you buy a put, you are buying insurance. So think about the fact that you have a stock, and again, let's say you bought the stock for 25. If the stock price goes up, you make money. If the stock price goes down, then you make a loss. The worst case scenario is that the stock price goes to zero, and then your loss is the entire $25. Now, if you have a stock and a put, which is what a protective put is, and the stock price goes down, the long put actually goes up. So when you look at these two together, your loss is limited. So rather than going down with a protective put, we do not lose money after a certain point. We do lose some money because we have to pay for the put, but just because the stock heads down to zero doesn't mean that our overall position goes down to zero. On the other hand, when the stock price goes up, then the put does not have any payoff. So the put is out of the money. You do not need to make any payments. You've already made your payment of P, and the stock going up is good for you. So you keep the upside potential, but you limit the downside. Now, after talking about the covered call, we will look at numbers associated with the protective put. So let's do the covered call first, and the best way to do this is through examples. Again, the covered call is a stock and a short call. Let's say you buy a stock for 25 and sell a call for 3. So again, emphasizing the fact that this is a covered call. The call has a strike price of 25. What is the value and profit at different stock prices? And then what is the maximum profit, maximum loss, and break even? Now I'll try to have you do this first, and then on the next slide we will see the solution. Just a small terminology alert. You bought the stock for 25, but the stock can then go down in value or it could go up in value. Whatever the value of the stock is essentially the stock price. So if you say the stock price is down to 10, that means that the value of the stock is now 10. If the stock price goes to 20, that means the value of the stock is 20. When we talk about the short call value, that is referring to the payoff. If the stock goes down to 20, then the long is not going to exercise, so the payoff or the value is 0. And I'll emphasize this, the value is the same thing as payoff. If the stock ends up at 25 at expiration, then again the payoff is 0. But if the stock goes above 25, then it's in the money, it will be exercised, which means that the short call is going to lose. In the context of the short call, if the stock price is 25, then the payoff is going to be -2, and the payoff is going to be -5 if the stock price is 30. To come up with the total value, what you need to do is take the value of the stock and the value of the short call. So 25 over here, and now you can fill out the rest of the numbers. To come up with the profit, what you need to do is look at the value and then subtract the amount that you paid for the stock and add the amount that you received when you sold the call option. So based on that, try to come up with the numbers in this column, then try to come up with the maximum profit, maximum loss, break even, and draw this diagram where this is different stock prices, and this should be the profit on the y-axis. Here is what you should get. If the stock crashes down to 0, then obviously the value of the stock is 0. The call option is out of the money, so it will not be exercised. So the payoff is 0. The total value, which is stock price at time t, so ST is the stock price at time t, minus the payoff. This is the payoff on the short call, in the sense that this is 0 minus 0, so that is 0. Hopefully these other numbers make sense. If the stock is all the way up to 25, we have no payoff. So the total value is simply the value of the stock. If the stock is 27, then the payoff is -2 because the stock is in the money. The payoff for the long is 2. The payoff for the short is -2. So the way this is expressed, we say 27 minus 2. Here the payoff is the payoff for the long. That's why we have a minus sign. And the total value then is 25. So notice that the total value is capped at 25. Then the profit is given by this expression, and I hope that this makes total sense. The profit is equal to the total value at time t, which is given by this column, minus S0. S0 is how much you paid for the stock at time 0. So that was a cost, that's why it is being subtracted. And then the call option is what you sold and you made that money. So you add C0. That's how much you got initially. If we now use this formula, you can come up with all the numbers over here. So notice as the stock price increases, what happens to the profit? The profit is capped at 3. If the stock price is less than 25, then we have this situation. The break-even point is 22 and the worst case scenario or maximum loss is also 22. In terms of the formulas, the formula for the maximum profit is X, which is the strike price, minus S0, the initial price, plus C0. In this simple example, I set it up such that the strike price and the initial stock price is the same. In other words, you bought a stock for 25 and you also went short on a call option with a strike of 25. So these two numbers cancel each other out. Your maximum profit then is C0, which is 3. The way you can think about it, the stock price and the exercise price is 25. If the stock starts going up, then you make money on the stock, but the same amount of money is lost on the short call. So the stock and short call payoff cancel each other out, but the price that you got for the call option, which is $3, is what you pocket. In the next example, we look at a situation where X and S are not the same. The maximum loss is S0 minus C0, and I hope this is also obvious. If you just had the stock, then your maximum loss would be S0. But given that you are selling the call option, that is a buffer which is reducing your maximum loss. That's why we subtract the C0 amount. In our example, the worst case scenario is the stock goes down to 0, so you lose all 25 on the stock. But because you got $3 on the call option, that reduces your loss from 25 down to 22. And the break even is right here. It's the same number. Break even is 22. That is also given by S0 minus C0. Now I want you to do this example where you buy a stock for 25. So again, S0 is 25, but you sell a call for $2. So this is a little different from the previous example. And X is equal to 26. So notice that we have a higher strike price, and this should make sense. When the strike price is higher, the call is worth less. What is the value and profit at different stock prices? So try to fill this out before looking at the next slide. Here is what you should get. We use the same mechanism that we used earlier. This is the value of the stock. Here are the values of the short call. Notice that until 26, which is the strike price, the payoff is 0 on the short call. But after that, we do have a negative payoff because this is short. The total value is the sum of these two numbers. Initially the total value increases, but after we hit the strike price of 26, then the total value levels off at 26. The total profit as before is given by the total value from this column, and then you subtract the amount paid for the stock, which is S0, and you add the amount that you receive when you sell the call option, and that is 2. So if you plug in the numbers, here is what you should get for your total profit. Notice that the maximum profit is given by this expression, x minus S0 plus C0. The plus C0 should be obvious. This is 2 because you have sold the call option. Now here we have x minus S0. The way you can think about it is that x is equal to 26, S0 is equal to 25. This is how much you buy the stock for. If the stock price goes up, the first $1 is yours, because as the stock price is rising from 25 to 26, the call option does not kick in. It's only after 26 that the call option, in this case the short call, is going to cancel out the stock. So x minus s is 1. It is 26 minus 25. You pocket that 1. After that, the stock going up cancels because the payoff on the call is negative, and overall your maximum profit is 1 plus 2, which is 3. So hopefully if you've understood the explanation, that should make it easy for you to memorize this formula for the maximum profit. The maximum loss is actually much easier to remember. You know that if you only had the stock, then the worst case scenario is that the stock goes down to 0. So your maximum loss would be S0, which is what you paid. But then the call option gives you a cushion. In this case, the call option gave you a cushion of 2. So S0, 25 minus 2 is 23. And break even is the same number. S0 minus C0 again is 23. Now I want you to do example 3 from the curriculum. And if you want, you can also very quickly now plot the profit diagram. If profit is on the y-axis, stock price on the x-axis, notice that at high stock prices, the profit is 3, and then we come down. The maximum loss is 23, and the break even is also 23. Now we move to the protective put, which is the stock and a long put. You buy a stock for 25 and you buy a put for 3. The strike price is 25. So try to come up with these numbers using the same process that we used before. Here is the value of the stock, so different stock prices. The put value is the payoff on the long put. Remember, the strike is 25, so if the stock goes down to 0, that's good for the long put. This value would then be 25. Here the put value would be 15, and so on. The total value would be the sum of these two numbers. So here the total value is 25, here again 25, and so on. What about if the stock price goes to 30? The put is out of the money, so this is 0. The total value would be 30 plus 0, which is 30. And then the total profit is the value. So let's just take this bottom row. The value is 30 minus S0. That's how much you paid for the stock, and that is 25. Minus P0, and this is a minus because you paid for the put option. It's a long put. Unlike the covered call where you actually sold the call, there we had a plus, but here since you are buying the put, money out, therefore this is a negative. Now calculate all these numbers. come up with the maximum profit, maximum loss, break even, and then try to create this picture. Hopefully here is what you came up with. So we have the different stock prices, the put values, some of which I showed you, and then you have your total value or the total payoff, which is the value of the stock plus the payoff from the long put. Notice that at low stock prices, the total value is 25. So there is a floor value. And then at higher numbers, we have 28 and 30. The total profit, as I just described, is the value at time t. So that's this column over here, minus the initial stock price, which is 25, minus the amount paid for the put. And here are the numbers for the total profit. The total profit has a floor of -3. And then after that, the profit goes up as the stock price increases. This is the strike price of 25, which also happens to be S0. And this is the break-even point, which is 28. The maximum profit is infinite, as we can see over here. The maximum loss is S0 plus P0 minus X, which is 3. In this scenario, we set S0 and X to be the same. So we bought a stock for 25 and we also bought a put option with a strike of 25. So since both are 25, what that means is if the stock price goes down, the put option, which is a long put, goes up. So these two balance each other out and the net effect is 0. The loss then is simply the amount that we pay for the put, which is $3. So that is our maximum loss as shown over here. The break-even point then is S0, which is how much you paid for the stock, 25, plus P0, which in our example is 3. The way you can think about it is, if you paid $3 for the put and the stock goes from 25 to 26, you have still not recovered the $3 that you paid. Only if the stock goes up to 28, which is 25 plus the amount that you pay for the put option, that you break even. So with that explanation, I hope it is easy to remember this break-even formula. Now I want you to do this example. The only thing that has changed is P0, how much you pay for the put, and the strike price, which has come down to 24. Here is what you should get. The calculations are the same as what we've seen earlier, so I will not go over the numbers again. The only thing that I will emphasize is the fact that now S0 and X are different. So we have S0, which is equal to 25. That's how much you paid for the stock. And the strike price on the put is 24. The difference between S0 and X is 1, and that adds to your losses, because when the stock price comes down from 25 to 24, you lose $1, and only after that, so if the stock keeps going down below 24, that's where the put and the stock cancel each other out. But the $1 loss has been incurred. So the maximum loss is the difference of S and X, which is 1, and the amount that you pay for the put option, which in this example is 2. So the maximum loss now is 3. The break even as before is S0 plus P0. The explanation is exactly the same as what I gave on the previous example. Now I want you to do example 4, and again, just for completeness, here is the payoff diagram. Notice that this payoff diagram has the same shape as a long call. That brings us to the end of this reading. We talked about a long call and a short call. So very briefly, this is the payoff for a long call. This is the payoff for a short call, where this is the strike price. The profit for a long call will be a little below the payoff. This amount is what you pay for the call option. So we subtract that amount, or C, to come up with the profit for the long call. The profit for the short call is this picture over here, where we take the short call payoff and add the amount that we receive when we sell the call option. For long put and short put, this is the payoff on the long put, where we make money if the stock price goes down. The profit diagram for the long put looks like this, where we subtract the amount that is paid for the put option. This is the payoff for the short put, and the profit diagram would look like this, where we add the amount that is received for the put option. A covered call is equal to the stock and going short on the underlying. So the point is that if the stock starts coming down, then we get a bit of a cushion because we sold a call option. But if the stock keeps going down, then after that cushion has been exhausted, then we start losing money. So there is some benefit. This reduces our loss. That benefit comes at the cost of losing upside potential. So we make a little bit of money if the stock price stays the same, or if the stock price increases a little. But if the stock price keeps increasing, then S goes up. But because we are short on the call, the benefit is neutralized. A protective put is like an insurance policy, where we own the stock and we have a long put. So if the stock price goes up, that's great, because the put option is out of the money. All we lose is the amount that we pay for the put. So that's why it's like an insurance policy. When the stock price goes down, that insurance kicks in, because any losses that we make on the put, any losses that we make on the stock are balanced by the gain on the long put. As always, I want you to go over the curriculum summary, review the learning objectives. I have asked you to do the 4 examples in the curriculum, so do those diligently. Do the practice problems at the end of the reading. The practice problems are very good, and also try to do practice problems from other sources.